My name is Kennedy Shaw, I'm 31, and I just learned that blood doesn't mean boundaries. I'd spent 5 years working 60-hour weeks as a physical therapist, living like a monk, saving every penny to afford my own place in Boston. Finally saved enough for a 2-week vacation to Hawaii, my first real break-in forever. When I came home, my apartment had been completely gutted and renovated. My sister Peyton was moving in with her boyfriend. My family thought they were helping her out. Now they're learning what property laws really mean, and that some lines should never be crossed, family or not. Before I dive into this insane story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. If you've ever had family completely overstep their boundaries, smash that like button and subscribe. You'll want to hear how I stood up for myself when everyone expected me to just roll over and take it. Growing up with immigrant parents who came to America with nothing but grit and determination, I learned early that hard work was everything. Never depend on anyone else for your happiness or security, Dad would say. I took those words to heart, maybe too literally. After graduating with my physical therapy degree, I jumped straight into working at a rehab center in downtown Boston. The work was brutal but rewarding, helping people take their first steps after accidents, watching them regain movement they thought was lost forever. There's nothing like it. My personal life, simple, Spartan even. I lived in a shoebox studio for 6 years, 500 square feet. Kitchenette barely big enough for a microwave and mini fridge. Bathroom so tiny I could touch all 4 walls without moving, but it was cheap, which meant I could save. No expensive coffee shops, no shopping sprees, no fancy restaurants, packed lunches every single day, shopped clearance racks, picked up extra weekend shifts while my friends partied. They called me a workaholic, I called it having a goal. After years of this, clipping coupons, declining invitations, living like I was broke, I finally had enough for a down payment. 3 years ago, I bought my apartment, 1 bedroom on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse in a developing neighborhood. Not huge, but it was mine. The day I signed those papers was maybe the proudest moment of my life. I called my parents, expecting celebration. "That's nice," Dad said, "but Peyton just got promoted. We're taking her out to celebrate. You should come if you're not too busy." That's my family in a nutshell. Peyton, 4 years younger, has always been the golden child. While I was the responsible, reliable daughter who never made waves, Peyton was dramatic, charming, and somehow always the center of our universe. Her achievements got parades, mine got nods. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. But Peyton has a history of entitlement that my parents have enabled her entire life. She's bounced between jobs, apartments, relationships, always landing softly because Mom and Dad were there to catch her. Totaled her car, they bought her a new one. Couldn't make rent, they covered it. Dropped out of college, they funded her finding herself trip to Europe for 6 months. Meanwhile, I worked through college, paid off my student loans early, built my life brick by brick. I don't resent Peyton, but I wish my parents recognized that their constant rescuing wasn't helping her grow up. My apartment became my sanctuary. I spent weekends painting walls, scouring thrift stores for unique pieces, slowly transforming it into something that reflected me. Living room painted warm terracotta that glowed like amber in evening light. Bedroom in calming sage green with white trim, floating shelves for books and plants. The kitchen wasn't big, but I added a butcher block island that doubled as my dining table. My most prized possession was Grandma Rose's antique writing desk. Solid oak with intricate carvings and tiny drawers. Not valuable in dollars, but irreplaceable to me. Grandma Rose was the one person who truly saw me. When she passed, she left me the desk and a letter telling me how proud she was of my independence and determination. After 3 years, my apartment truly felt like home. Every corner had intention, every decoration told a story. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, paid for with my sweat and sacrifice. When I finally decided to take a vacation, it felt like the biggest indulgence. 2 full weeks in Hawaii, completely disconnected from work and responsibility. I'd never taken more than a long weekend off since starting my career. My boss practically shoved me out the door. "You need this break before you burn out." I spent months planning, researched the best beaches, hikes, restaurants, booked a modest hotel room a few blocks from the beach, even splurged on scuba diving lessons and a helicopter tour. The week before leaving, I deep cleaned everything, emptied the fridge, asked Mrs. Fletcher next door to water my plants, double-checked all windows and locks. I was nervous about leaving my space for so long, but thrilled for the adventure. Little did I know my carefully curated sanctuary wouldn't be waiting when I returned. Hawaii was everything I'd dreamed of and more. The moment I stepped off the plane, warm, fragrant air wrapped around me like a hug. My shoulders, perpetually tense from bending over patients, immediately began to relax. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be, no one depending on me. I spent my first day walking Waikiki Beach, watching surfers catch waves while sun glinted off turquoise water. Dug my toes into warm sand and felt 5 years of tension start melting away. That night, sitting on my hotel balcony, listening to distant ukulele music, I thought, this is what living feels like. Each day brought new adventures, hiked through rainforest to hidden waterfalls, learned to snorkel and floated above coral reefs mesmerized by rainbow fish, Tried traditional Hawaiian food at local spots, poke bowls, lomi salmon, hopia pie that melted in my mouth. The scuba diving was challenging but exhilarating. My first time descending beneath waves, watching bubbles rise while tropical fish swirled around me like entering another world. The helicopter tour showed me dramatic coastlines and volcanic landscapes, views I'd only seen in nature documentaries. But the best part, disconnecting. I'd promised myself to limit phone use, stay off social media. I wanted to be present, experience Hawaii with all my senses rather than through a camera lens. I kept my phone on airplane mode most of the time, only checking messages every few days. When I did check, I noticed some weird texts from my family. Mom sent several messages asking for pictures of my apartment layout, measurements of the living room and bedroom. I figured she was redecorating her own place, using mine as inspiration. Sent quick responses with the info and went back to enjoying paradise. Midway through my second week, I got a cryptic message from Mom. "You'll be so surprised when you get back, can't wait to see your face." I assumed they were planning a welcome home dinner. Maybe picked up some Hawaiian decorations as a sweet gesture, replied with a quick looking forward to it, and went back to my beachfront meditation. The vacation passed too quickly. On my last evening, I sat on the beach watching sunset paint the sky orange, pink, and purple. I felt renewed, at peace, ready to return with fresh energy. I promised myself I wouldn't wait another 5 years for a real vacation. The flight home was brutal, long, cramped, harsh re-entry to reality after 2 weeks of spacious beaches and open skies. By the time we landed in Boston, I was exhausted, dehydrated, just wanted my own bed. Collected my luggage, rumpled clothes, and sand-sprinkled souvenirs stuffed inside, and ordered an Uber. My driver was chatty, asking about my trip. Under normal circumstances, I might have enjoyed the conversation. But after 8 hours in a middle seat with a crying baby 2 rows behind me, I wanted silence. As we approached my neighborhood, I noticed more moving trucks than usual. First of the month, typical moving time in a city full of monthly leases. "Looks like everyone's moving today," my driver said, navigating around a double-parked U-Haul. Then, as we pulled up to my building, he nodded toward another truck. "Moving someone in." I glanced at it, noting the local company logo. "Probably the second floor," I replied, remembering the young couple there had mentioned leaving soon. I tipped the driver, wheeled my suitcase toward my building, excited to be home despite exhaustion. The familiar lobby with slightly peeling wallpaper and eternally broken vending machine was a welcome sight. Pressed the elevator button, already mapping out my evening. Long shower, takeout, unpack essentials, fall into my own bed. As the elevator climbed to the fourth floor, I felt strange uneasiness settle over me. Something about Mom's texts and that moving truck nagged at me, but I dismissed it as travel fatigue. After all, what could possibly be wrong? I was coming home to my safe, comfortable space exactly as I'd left it, or so I thought. The elevator doors opened to the fourth-floor hallway. Immediately, I noticed something odd. The corridor was cluttered with boxes and bubble wrap. As I wheeled my suitcase toward my apartment number 412, I had to navigate around dismantled furniture parts and packing materials. "Someone's really making a mess," I muttered, annoyed the building manager wasn't enforcing rules about keeping common areas clear. Then I realized with growing horror that the trail of boxes led directly to my door, which was propped open with a brick. My heart started racing. Had I been robbed? Was someone squatting in my apartment? I abandoned my suitcase in the hallway and rushed forward, pushing the door wider. The scene inside stopped me cold. My apartment, my carefully decorated, personally curated home, was unrecognizable. The terracotta walls of my living room were now sterile white. My comfortable, worn-in sofa had been replaced with a sleek gray sectional I'd never seen. The vintage rug I'd found at an estate sale was gone, replaced by some trendy geometric print that hurt my eyes. But most shocking were the people. 3 burly movers were carrying a glass dining table through my living room, directed by a woman with her back to me. A woman with familiar honey blonde hair cut in an angled bob. "Peyton?" I croaked, my voice barely audible over scraping furniture. My sister turned, her face lighting up. "Kennedy, you're back." She bounded over and hugged me like this was completely normal. "Surprise, what do you think? Isn't it amazing?" I couldn't speak. My eyes darted around the space, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. All my furniture was gone. My books were no longer on shelves. My art had been replaced by generic canvas prints with inspirational quotes. Even the curtains were different, sheer white things offering no privacy instead of my cozy thermal drapes. What happened to my things?" I finally managed, my voice small and distant. "Oh, we packed most of it up," Peyton said casually, waving toward boxes in the corner. "Mom and Dad helped. Some stuff we donated since we figured you wouldn't need it anymore. The couch was kind of stained, and that old rug had seen better days." "Donated?" The word felt like a slap. "You gave away my furniture, just the stuff that wasn't worth keeping," she shrugged. "Weston and I needed to make the space work for us." Speaking of, she turned and called over her shoulder. Weston, Kennedy's home, a tall man with carefully trimmed beard, emerged from the hallway leading to my bedroom. "Hey Kennedy, nice to finally meet you. Peyton's told me so much about you." He extended his hand like this was a normal dinner party introduction. I ignored his hand. Why are you in my apartment? What's going on? Peyton's smile faltered slightly. Mom didn't tell you Weston and I are moving in. His lease ended and we've been looking for a place. But you know how crazy the Boston market is. Mom suggested we use your place since you're never home anyway, always working or at the gym. It's way too big for just one person. The movers continued working around us, bringing in furniture I didn't recognize. When asked Peyton where to put a standing lamp, she directed him to my reading corner where Grandma Rose's armchair used to be. Where's my bed? I asked, new wave of panic washing over me. We put it in storage, Peyton said. We brought our California King, amazing memory foam and cooling gel. You should try it sometime. Oh, and we're using your bedroom, obviously. We set up the living room so it doubles as your bedroom. This couch pulls out into a queen. I pushed past her and Weston, running down the hallway to my bedroom. The sage green walls were now light gray. My wooden dresser that Grandpa had refinished was gone, replaced by a glossy white IKEA monstrosity. My bed with its handmade quilt was nowhere to be seen. Instead, an enormous bed with tufted headboard dominated the space. I spun around looking for my writing desk, Grandma Rose's desk. It wasn't there. Where's my desk? I demanded, returning to the living room where Peyton was instructing movers about hanging a large TV. The antique desk that was in my bedroom, where is it? Peyton looked momentarily confused, then her expression cleared. Oh, that old thing, Mom took it. Said it was technically a family heirloom, so it should stay with family. I am family, I shouted, my composure finally breaking. That desk was given to me by Grandma Rose, it's mine. The movers paused their work, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Weston cleared his throat and muttered something about checking kitchen deliveries. Geez, calm down, Peyton said, looking embarrassed. It's just a desk. Mom thought it would look nice in her sewing room. You can visit it any time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked around again, noticing more details of the invasion. My kitchen held appliances I didn't recognize: high-end espresso machine, professional stand mixer, juicer still in its box. The refrigerator door was covered with photos of Peyton and Weston, in my apartment, where my calendar and shopping list should have been. Who authorized this? I asked, voice shaking with anger and disbelief. How did you even get in? Mom has your spare key, remember, for emergencies? Peyton said this like it explained everything. And nobody needed to authorize it. Mom and Dad thought it was a great idea. They said you wouldn't mind helping your sister out. We're family after all. You can't just move into someone else's home without permission. This is illegal. Peyton rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like we're strangers breaking in. We're family. Mom said you'd be thrilled to have company finally. She worries about you being alone all the time. I stood in the middle of what used to be my living room, surrounded by strangers moving furniture I didn't own into an apartment I no longer recognized. Something broke inside me. This wasn't just about furniture or paint colors. This was about my autonomy, my boundaries, my very identity being erased without a second thought. Get out, I whispered. What? Peyton looked genuinely confused. Get out, I screamed. All of you, get out of my apartment now. The movers froze, looking to Peyton for direction. She laughed nervously. She's just jet-lagged, guys. Keep working. Kennedy, let's talk about this reasonably. Maybe you should sit down. I pulled out my phone. Either everyone leaves right now or I'm calling the police to report trespassers in my home. Peyton's face went pale. You wouldn't. My finger hovered over the emergency call button. Try me. Peyton stared at me, her expression morphing from confusion to indignation. What is wrong with you? We're doing you a favor. This place looks 1,000 times better now and you'll have company instead of coming home to an empty apartment every night. A favor? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You call breaking into my home, repainting my walls, replacing my furniture, and claiming my bedroom a favor? We didn't break in, Peyton insisted. Mom used the key you gave her, and we didn't just barge in. This has been planned for weeks. Mom's been asking you about measurements and stuff. You responded to her texts. The movers were shifting uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether to continue. Weston had reappeared in the doorway, keeping safe distance from the confrontation. I thought she was redecorating her house, I shouted, not orchestrating a takeover of mine. It's not a takeover, Weston interjected, attempting a tone that only infuriated me more. We're planning to contribute to utilities and groceries. It's win-win, really. I turned my glare on him. I don't recall asking for roommates, let alone offering my bedroom to complete strangers. I'm hardly a stranger, he replied, looking offended. I've been dating Peyton for 8 months. We've been at the same family dinners. 3, I corrected. 3 family dinners. And you spent the entire time talking about your fantasy football league. I couldn't pick your voice out of a lineup, let alone want to share my home with you. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. We're heading over. Can't wait to see your reaction to the surprise. Bringing champagne. Perfect, I muttered. The masterminds are arriving. Peyton peeked at my phone. Good, Mom and Dad can explain everything. You're being completely unreasonable right now. I'm being unreasonable, I laughed incredulously. You stole my home, borrowed, Peyton corrected. It's just temporary until we find our own place. And how long will that take? Peyton and Weston exchanged glances. The market's pretty tight right now, Weston said hesitantly, but probably just 6 months, a year max. A year, the room seemed to spin. You expect me to sleep on a pull-out couch in my own living room for a year? It's a really comfortable pull-out, Peyton offered weakly. Memory foam mattress top of the line. Before I could respond, there was commotion in the hallway. My parents burst through the door, dad carrying champagne, mom holding a gift bag. Surprise, they called out in unison, then faltered as they took in the scene. Me standing with my phone still poised to call emergency services, Peyton with tears welling, Weston backed against the wall, three very uncomfortable movers frozen around the room. What's going on? Mom asked, her smile fading. Kennedy, you're home early. We wanted everything perfect before you arrived. Perfect, I repeated. You call this perfect? You gave away my furniture, painted over my walls, and moved another couple into my bedroom without my permission. Dad set down the champagne with a thunk. Now, Kennedy, don't be dramatic. We've improved the place. Those old walls were much too dark, and that furniture was secondhand at best. It was MY secondhand furniture in MY apartment that I bought with MY money. Mom stepped forward, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. Honey, we thought you'd be happy. Peyton and Weston needed a place and you have all this space. You're always saying you're too busy with work to enjoy it properly. So your solution was to give it away without asking me? We're not giving it away, Dad said firmly. It's still your apartment, you're just sharing it for a while. Sharing implies consent, I pointed out. I never agreed to this. We didn't think you'd mind, Mom insisted. You've always been so generous. Remember when you let Peyton borrow your prom dress, or when you gave her your car when hers was in the shop for 3 months? A dress and occasional car use are not the same as my entire home, I was shouting now, beyond caring about the spectacle. And even those things she asked first. Peyton stepped forward, face tear-streaked but eyes hard. You're making such a big deal out of this. It's just stuff, Kennedy, material things. Family is what matters. If family mattered, you would have respected my boundaries and my property. What boundaries? Dad scoffed. You've never set any boundaries. You've always been the reliable one, the one we could count on to help without making a fuss. And there it was, the crux of the matter. In their eyes, I existed to accommodate, to make things easier for everyone else without complaint. My needs, my wants, my very personhood was secondary to my usefulness. Well, I'm setting boundaries now, I said, voice steadier than I expected. Everyone needs to leave. Now, movers, please stop bringing things in. In fact, start taking them back out. Kennedy, be reasonable, Mom pleaded. Peyton and Weston have already given up their apartment. They have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem. They can stay with you and Dad. You have that big 4-bedroom house with just the two of you. My parents exchanged quick glances. That wouldn't work, Dad said quickly. Your mother's redecorating the guest rooms. With my furniture, I asked pointedly. Mom had the grace to look embarrassed. Just a few pieces that worked with the new color scheme. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. Here's what's going to happen. Everyone is leaving my apartment today. Peyton, Weston, I'm sorry you don't have a place, but you cannot stay here. Mom, Dad, I want Grandma Rose's desk returned immediately, along with any other items you've taken from my home. You can't just throw your sister out on the street, Dad exclaimed, face reddening. Watch me, I replied evenly. This is my property, I own it, I pay the mortgage, I make the rules. After all we've done for you, Mom said, voice trembling, this is how you repay us, by turning your back on family when they need you. It was a familiar guilt trip, one that had worked countless times before. But standing in the ruins of my sanctuary, surrounded by evidence of how little they respected me, the words bounced off harmlessly. What exactly have you done for me lately? I asked quietly. Did you help me through physical therapy school? Did you contribute to my down payment? Have you ever even once put my needs above Peyton's? The silence was deafening. That's what I thought, I continued. I love you all, but this stops now. I'm going to wait in the hallway. When I come back in 15 minutes, I expect to see the movers packing up, not unpacking. If not, my next call will be to a lawyer. I walked out, closing the door behind me. My legs carried me to the stairwell where I sank onto the top step, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. For the first time in my life, I had directly opposed my family, drawn a line they couldn't cross. It felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. 15 minutes later, I returned to find the movers packing items back onto their truck, directed by stone-faced Weston. Peyton sat on the new couch, sobbing dramatically while Mom patted her hand. Dad stood by the window, back rigid with anger. Thank you for respecting my decision, I said to the room. Dad turned, expression thunderous. This isn't over, Kennedy. You're making a huge mistake. Peyton and Weston had plans for this place, good plans. I'm sure they did, but they should have made those plans for their own place, not mine. We're family, Mom said, voice breaking. We're supposed to help each other. Help, yes, steamroll, no. I stood firm, watching as movers continued their work in reverse. I'll be staying with a friend tonight. I expect everything to be out by tomorrow and my original furniture returned. That might be difficult, Dad muttered. Some of it's been donated. I felt fresh wave of anger. Then you'd better start visiting donation centers because I want it back, all of it, especially Grandma Rose's desk. As I turned to leave, Peyton's voice stopped me. You've changed, she accused. You used to be nice. Hawaii made you selfish. I looked back at my sister, seeing for the first time not the golden child or perpetual victim, but simply a woman who'd never faced real consequences for her actions. I haven't changed, I told her quietly. I've just finally realized my worth. Maybe it's time you discovered yours instead of taking mine. With that, I walked out, leaving my family to deal with the mess they'd created both literally and figuratively. That night, I stayed at my friend Jenna's apartment, curled up on her guest futon with borrowed pajamas and a sympathetic ear. As I recounted the day's events, reality hit me in waves. My home, my sanctuary, had been violated. My family, the people who were supposed to love and respect me, had casually disregarded my boundaries and autonomy. I can't believe they did that, Jenna said for the fifth time, refilling my wine glass. That's not just inconsiderate, it's illegal. They don't see it that way, I sighed. In their minds, family property is communal property. My name might be on the deed, but in their eyes, that's just a technicality. Well, the law doesn't see it as a technicality, Jenna pointed out. What they did is breaking and entering, vandalism and theft. You could press charges if you wanted to. The thought of seeing my family in court made my stomach turn, but I couldn't deny the kernel of satisfaction it gave me. For once, there would be real consequences for their actions. I spent a restless night checking my phone every hour. The texts and calls poured in, Mom alternating between guilt trips and tearful apologies. Dad's messages growing increasingly stern and demanding. Peyton oscillating between self-pity and accusation. I silenced my phone but couldn't turn it off completely. The next morning, I returned to my apartment with Jenna for moral support. The moving truck was gone. The hallway was clear. I unlocked my door with trepidation, unsure what I'd find. The apartment was empty of Peyton and Weston's things, but far from restored. The walls remained that sterile white, washing out the warmth and character I'd carefully cultivated. The living room held only my old couch, returned but positioned awkwardly in the center. My bookshelves stood bare. In the kitchen, my refrigerator was empty, magnets and notes gone. Cabinets contained only a fraction of my dishes and cookware. My bedroom had my bed stripped of linens and my dresser, but nothing else. In the corner sat several large plastic storage bins labeled in Mom's handwriting, Kennedy's things. I opened one to find my books haphazardly thrown in, some with bent pages and damaged spines. Another contained picture frames with cracked glass, knickknacks wrapped carelessly in newspaper, various small items all jumbled together. They really didn't care, did they? Jenna murmured, looking into one of the bins. It's like they packed up your life as an afterthought. I sank onto my couch, feeling hollow. I need to figure out what's missing, especially Grandma Rose's desk. We spent 3 hours creating an inventory. The list of missing items grew depressingly long: vintage rug, several pieces of art, floor lamps, dining table and chairs, kitchenware including my expensive chef's knife set, and most devastatingly my grandmother's desk. I called Mom. Where's the rest of my stuff? And don't tell me you don't know. We returned everything we could, she replied, voice small. Some things had already been given away. Given away in 2 weeks? How is that possible? Your father knows someone at the donation center. They fast-tracked the processing. And Grandma Rose's desk? A pause. I've set it up in my sewing room. It's being well taken care of, Kennedy. Better than it was in your bedroom where nobody could appreciate it. It's not yours to appreciate, I said through gritted teeth. Grandma left it to me. I want it back. We can discuss that later. Right now, your father and I think you need to cool down and reconsider your position about Peyton and Weston. They're staying in a hotel that's costing a fortune. I hung up. The casual way she dismissed the theft of my property told me everything I needed to know. What are you going to do? Jenna asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to just replace everything and move on, pretend this never happened, but another part wants justice, Jenna finished. And you deserve it, Kennedy. Your family needs to understand they can't treat you this way. That afternoon, more friends arrived, coworkers from the rehab center who'd heard about my situation. They brought cleaning supplies, pizza, and determination. Together, we began reclaiming my space, wiping away lingering presence of the invasion. As we worked, Maria, a physical therapist who worked with accident victims, asked a question that stopped me cold. If one of your patients told you this story, that their family had entered their home without permission, redecorated, given away their possessions, and tried to move someone else in, what would you tell them? I paused, rag in hand. I'd tell them they were being abused, that healthy families don't violate boundaries like that they deserve better. So why is it different when it happens to you? She was right, of course. If a patient had described my situation, I would have encouraged them to protect themselves, establish firm boundaries, even seek legal recourse if necessary. I wouldn't have expected them to simply forgive and forget. That evening, after my friends left and I sat alone in my partially restored apartment, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and searched for Property Lawyers Boston. The first firm had excellent reviews and offered free initial consultations. Before I could second-guess myself, I sent an email requesting an appointment. The next morning, I received a response. Attorney Lauren Porter could see me that afternoon. I rearranged my work schedule and went to her downtown office, modern space with glass walls and sleek furniture. Lauren wasn't what I expected. Instead of the stern, intimidating figure I'd imagined, she was a warm woman in her 50s with laugh lines and a direct gaze. She listened to my story without interruption, taking occasional notes. What they did is absolutely illegal, she confirmed when I finished. Unauthorized entry, property damage, theft. These are serious offenses, family or not. I don't want to send my parents and sister to jail, I clarified quickly. I just want my property back and for them to understand they can't do this again. Lauren nodded. There are several approaches we can take. We can start with a formal demand letter outlining the violations and requesting return of your property and compensation for damages. If that doesn't work, we can file civil action. And if Peyton and Weston try to come back, we can file for a restraining order if necessary. But let's start with the letter. Sometimes just seeing legal letterhead is enough to make people realize the seriousness of their actions. As I left the office with a plan, I felt both relieved and heartsick. I never imagined needing legal protection from my own family. Part of me still hoped they'd come to their senses, return my belongings, offer sincere apologies without legal intervention. That hope was dashed when I checked my phone to find a voicemail from Dad. Kennedy, this ridiculous tantrum has gone on long enough. Your mother is heartbroken. Peyton is devastated, and you're tearing this family apart over some old furniture and paint colors. We raised you better than this. Call us when you're ready to apologize and help your sister like a proper family member should. His words, so dismissive of my feelings and rights, solidified my resolve. This wasn't about furniture or paint, it was about respect, boundaries, and my right to determine what happened in my own home. If my family couldn't understand that without legal intervention, so be it. I called Lauren and gave her the go-ahead to draft the demand letter. As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first, refusing to be the family doormat. It hurt. But beneath the pain was something new and powerful, self-respect. That night, I slept in my own bed in my sterile white bedroom, surrounded by half-empty shelves and gaps where my belongings should have been. But despite the emptiness, I slept better than I had in years. Unburdened by the weight of always accommodating others at my own expense. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but I'd face them standing tall, secure in the knowledge that I was finally honoring the independence Grandma Rose had seen in me long before I recognized it myself. The response to Lauren's letter was swift and explosive. Mom called sobbing within an hour of receiving it, alternating between tearful pleas and accusations of betrayal. How could you involve lawyers? We're family. Do you know how this makes us look? Dad's reaction was cold fury. His voicemail, no daughter of mine threatens legal action against her own parents. Fix this immediately. Peyton took to social media, vague posting about toxic family members and selfish behavior. Without naming me directly, she made it clear to our mutual friends and extended family that I'd committed some unforgivable act of cruelty. Her posts portrayed her as homeless and abandoned by her heartless sister, conveniently omitting that she'd tried to commandeer my apartment without permission. Extended family quickly took sides. My Aunt Catherine called to lecture me about family loyalty. Your mother raised you better than this. Lawyers? Really, Kennedy? Your poor sister has nowhere to go. My cousin Patrick, however, surprised me by texting support. About time someone stood up to Aunt Helen and Uncle Bob about their golden child syndrome. Peyton's been getting away with murder her whole life. I tried focusing on work, but it was difficult. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members expressing disappointment or occasionally support. I started leaving it in my locker during patient sessions, unable to concentrate with constant intrusions. Lauren advised me to document everything, condition of my apartment before and after, items still missing, any communication from my family about the incident. If this goes to court, she explained, evidence will be crucial. So I spent evenings photographing empty spaces where furniture should have been, making lists of missing items with estimated values, saving voicemails and texts that demonstrated my family's attitudes. Depressing work, cataloging the physical manifestation of their disregard. My coworkers became an unexpected source of strength. When they heard what happened, they organized a refurnishing party. Maria brought extra kitchen supplies from a recent upgrade. Tom, our receptionist, had a coffee table in storage he no longer needed. Jenna arrived with plants to brighten the sterile white walls I hadn't yet repainted. As we arranged these donations and hand-me-downs, creating a new, eclectic space from remnants of the old and generosity of friends, I felt warmth I hadn't experienced with my biological family in years. This is what support looks like, Maria commented, positioning a fern by my window. People who respect your boundaries while helping you rebuild. A week after the letter was sent, Lauren called with news. Your parents have responded through their attorney. They're claiming that since they had a key and had communicated with you about measurements, there was implied consent for the changes they made. That's ridiculous, I sputtered. Asking for measurements doesn't imply consent to move someone else into my home. I agree, and no court would support their interpretation, Lauren assured me. They're also claiming the desk was never officially yours, that your grandmothers will left it to the family rather than specifically to you. My blood boiled. That's a lie. Grandma Rose left me a letter with the desk, explicitly stating it was mine. Do you still have that letter? I closed my eyes, thinking. It was in the desk, in a hidden compartment in the bottom drawer. Then we need to get that desk back immediately before that letter conveniently disappears, Lauren said. I'm filing for an emergency hearing for return of property. That afternoon, leaving work, I ran into a familiar face in the parking lot. Megan, Peyton's former roommate from 2 years ago. She approached hesitantly. I heard about what happened. Peyton's been posting about it nonstop. I sighed, too tired to defend myself. I'm sure she has. I believe you, Megan said simply. Peyton did something similar to me when we were roommates. She gradually took over more of our apartment, storing her things in my closet, using my bedroom when I was at work because it had better light for her makeup videos, even wearing my clothes without asking. When I finally confronted her, she made me out to be the villain to all our friends. Her story was so familiar it gave me chills. How did you handle it? Not well, Megan admitted. I just moved out when the lease ended and avoided her. But I wish I'd stood up for myself like you're doing. If you need someone to testify about her pattern of behavior, I'm willing. I thanked her, took her contact information, shared it with Lauren. It might not be directly relevant, but it established a pattern that could be useful. The next day, Lauren filed a formal eviction notice against Peyton and Weston, even though they weren't currently in my apartment. It's precautionary, she explained. This legally establishes they have no right to occupy your property in case they try to move back in while this is being resolved. She also filed for a temporary restraining order preventing them from entering my apartment without explicit permission. Again, precautionary. But given their demonstrated disregard for your property rights, it's warranted. The paperwork was served to Peyton and Weston at the hotel where they were staying. Within hours, my phone exploded with outraged messages. Weston, who'd remained largely in the background, sent a particularly vehement text. A restraining order? Are you insane? We're family. You've completely overreacted to a simple misunderstanding. I didn't respond to any messages, following Lauren's advice to let all communication go through proper legal channels. But each angry text reinforced my decision. None of them showed any understanding of what they'd done wrong or any respect for my property rights. Dad's final message before I blocked his number was perhaps most revealing. I don't know where we went wrong with you, Kennedy. Your sister needs help, and instead of supporting her, you're throwing laws and lawyers at her. Property can be replaced. Family is forever. In his worldview, my needs would always be secondary to Peyton's. My property would always be fair game if she wanted it. My boundaries would always be obstacles to overcome rather than lines to respect. The court date was set for the following week, expedited hearing due to the nature of the case. Lauren prepared me for what to expect, coaching me to stay calm and factual despite any emotional appeals my family might make. Judges have seen every trick in the book, she assured me. Tears and family loyalty arguments don't override property law. As the date approached, I felt strange calm settling over me. The apartment was gradually becoming mine again, different from before, but still mine. I'd repainted the living room, not the original terracotta, but a warm golden yellow that brightened the space. The furniture was a mix of salvaged pieces and new finds, creating a fresh start from the wreckage. The night before court, I stood in the center of my reclaimed living room and realized that regardless of the judge's ruling, I'd already won the most important battle. I'd stood up for myself, established boundaries, refused to be erased from my own life. Whatever happened tomorrow, that victory could never be taken away. The county courthouse was imposing granite with towering columns and marble floors that amplified every footstep. I met Lauren in the lobby, dressed in the conservative navy suit she'd recommended. My family arrived separately, parents stone-faced, Peyton red-eyed and dramatic, Weston looking uncomfortable in a slightly too small blazer. We were directed to a small courtroom where Judge Eleanor Winter's sharp-eyed woman in her 60s presided. The proceedings were less formal than I'd imagined, more like a structured conversation than dramatic TV courtroom scenes. Lauren presented our case first, methodically outlining the facts. My ownership of the apartment, unauthorized entry and alterations, removal and donation of my property without consent, attempted occupation by Peyton and Weston. She submitted photographs of the apartment before and after, text messages from my family acknowledging their actions, statements from neighbors who'd witnessed moving trucks and renovation activities while I was away. My parents' lawyer, slick man in expensive suit, tried painting the situation as a simple family misunderstanding. Your Honor, this is a case that should never have reached your courtroom. The Monroe family was simply trying to help two of their daughters, one by renovating her outdated apartment, the other by providing housing during a difficult rental market. There was no malicious intent. Judge Winters interrupted him. Intent doesn't change the law, counselor. Did Miss Shaw's parents and sister have explicit permission to make these changes and move new occupants in? They had implied consent, Your Honor. Miss Shaw provided measurements and responded positively to messages about surprises awaiting her return. The judge turned to me. Miss Shaw, did you at any point give permission for these renovations or for your sister to move into your apartment? Absolutely not, Your Honor, I replied firmly. I provided measurements because I thought my mother was considering changes to her own home. I never agreed to any changes to my apartment or to having roommates. Judge Winters nodded and turned back to my parents' lawyer. As for the personal property that was removed and donated, was the plaintiff's permission obtained for those disposals? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The items were old and in poor condition. The family believed they were helping by upgrading. That wasn't my question, the judge interrupted. Was permission obtained? No, Your Honor. And the desk that belonged to the plaintiff's grandmother, its current location? Mom raised her hand slightly. It's in my sewing room, Your Honor. It's a family heirloom. Do you have documentation that it belongs to the family rather than specifically to Miss Shaw? Mom looked at Dad, who spoke up. My mother intended it for family use. Kennedy just happened to have it in her apartment. Lauren interjected. Your Honor, we have reason to believe there's a letter inside the desk explicitly gifting it to my client. We request immediate access to verify this. Judge Winters considered for a moment. Here's my ruling. The defendants had no legal right to enter the plaintiff's property for purposes other than emergency access as intended when the spare key was provided. They had no right to alter the property, remove possessions, or attempt to establish new occupants without explicit consent from the owner. She turned to my parents and sister. The restraining order preventing defendants from entering the plaintiff's apartment without written permission is granted. The eviction notice establishing that Peyton Monroe and Weston Blake have no right to occupy the premises is granted. Dad started to protest, but the judge held up her hand. Furthermore, I'm ordering immediate return of all removed property, including the desk in question. If items have been donated or otherwise disposed of, defendants will provide fair market compensation for replacement. She looked directly at Mom. Mrs. Monroe, you will make the desk available for retrieval today. Court officers will accompany Miss Shaw to verify the presence of the letter she mentioned and oversee the desk's return to her apartment. My family sat in stunned silence. They truly believed family ties would override property law, that the judge would see their actions as loving rather than violating. This court takes a dim view of property violations regardless of family relationships, Judge Winters continued. Family members do not have special rights to override property ownership. If anything, they have greater responsibility to respect boundaries. With a final tap of her gavel, it was over. Lauren squeezed my hand under the table. Perfect outcome, she whispered. My family avoided looking at me as we exited. Only Peyton approached, her expression a mixture of anger and bewilderment. I hope you're happy, she said. You've torn apart our family over some furniture and paint. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw for perhaps the first time how different our realities were. In her world, her desires naturally took precedence. Any obstacle was unfair imposition. Any boundary was personal rejection. This was never about furniture or paint, Peyton, I said quietly. It was about respect. I hope someday you understand that. That afternoon, I rode with a court officer to my parents' house to retrieve Grandma Rose's desk. Mom answered the door, face tight with suppressed emotion. Without a word, she led us to her sewing room where the desk sat by the window, already cleared of her supplies. I went straight to the bottom drawer, pressed the hidden catch that released the false bottom. There it was, the envelope with my name in Grandma's elegant script. I showed it to the court officer, who nodded and made a note in his report. I'll arrange for movers to pick this up tomorrow, I told Mom. Thank you for taking care of it. She didn't respond. But as I turned to leave, she said softly, she always favored you, my own mother, and she favored you over me or Peyton. I paused in the doorway. It wasn't about favoritism, Mom. It was about connection. Grandma Rose and I understood each other. In the weeks that followed, friends helped me continue restoring my apartment. We repainted every room, not trying to recreate exactly what had been before, but creating something new that still reflected my personality. Some original furniture was recovered from donation centers. Other pieces were replaced with new finds I grew to love even more than their predecessors. Grandma Rose's desk returned to its place of honor, now in my living room where I could see it every day. I reread her letter, appreciating her wisdom with new understanding. Kennedy, I leave you this desk because, like you, it is both beautiful and practical, with hidden depths that reveal themselves only to those who take the time to truly know it. Never let anyone make you feel small or inconvenient. Your strength is in your boundaries, not despite them. Mom began reaching out hesitantly about a month after the court hearing. Her initial messages were stilted and formal, but gradually became more genuine. She never explicitly apologized, but started asking permission before stopping by, respecting my no when I wasn't available, acknowledging that the apartment was my space. Dad took longer to come around. His pride made it difficult to admit wrongdoing, but eventually he too began showing small signs of changed behavior, asking rather than telling, listening rather than dismissing. Peyton remained resentful, convinced she was the victim. She and Weston eventually found an apartment across town, though I heard through family gossip they struggled to maintain it. Part of me felt sad for her, knowing her inability to respect boundaries would continue creating problems. But I also recognized I couldn't fix that for her. She'd have to learn those lessons herself, just as I had learned mine. 6 months after the renovation incident, as my friends now jokingly called it, I hosted a proper housewarming party. My apartment was fully restored and improved. Warm colors on walls, comfortable furniture arranged for conversation, plants thriving on every windowsill. Grandma Rose's desk held a place of honor, now used daily rather than admired from distance. I invited my parents, extending an olive branch. To my surprise, they came, bringing a houseplant and bottle of wine. They seemed uncomfortable at first, uncertain of their role in this new dynamic where they were guests rather than authorities in my space. But as the evening progressed, I caught glimpses of what our relationship could be if built on mutual respect rather than expected compliance. Peyton declined the invitation, but I left the door open for the future. As my friends and family mingled in my reclaimed space, Jenna raised her glass in a toast. To Kennedy, who taught us all that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. I smiled, thinking how far I'd come from that shell-shocked woman who'd stood in a stranger's version of her apartment just 6 months ago. The journey had been painful but necessary. I'd lost some illusions about my family but gained a truer understanding of myself. Later that week, I booked another vacation mountain cabin for a long weekend. I arranged for a proper house sitter, left detailed instructions about plants and mail, and changed the locks. As I packed, I felt none of the anxiety that had accompanied my Hawaii preparations. I knew my home would be waiting for me exactly as I left it. Standing in my living room, looking at the space I'd reclaimed and recreated, I felt profound gratitude for the painful lesson I'd learned. That true love, whether in families or friendships, is built on respect for boundaries, not their erasure. That my home, like my life, was mine to shape according to my own needs and desires. That standing up for myself wasn't selfish, it was essential. I ran my hand over the smooth wood of Grandma Rose's desk, feeling the connection to the woman who'd seen my strength long before I recognized it myself. "Thank you," I whispered to her, and to the painful experience that had forced me to claim that strength at last. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Drop a comment below, and if this story hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves today. Remember, your boundaries deserve respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to enforce them.